is using qualitative evidence synthesis as a research design. And that is what will be taking place here now as 1B demonstration. And we're gonna be ensuring that at the end of the demonstration, you are given an opportunity either to comment or to ask questions. And this will continue until 16:30. Immediately it's 16:30. Please don't remain in the room. Go make yourself beautiful. Bring your best outfit for the evening. There is a gala dinner starting at 1800 hours. 1800 hours is arrival, and it is at a venue called Serengeti. If you get a map or you ask at reception or our usherers, they're gonna lead you to Serengeti, and that is where we're gonna be even giving more awards. And I commit that my board chairperson here from Sci-Bono can support me in terms of these awards because they are not from WCQR. And I've got fellow board members here. I see Mr. Malele, I see Mr. Zotezi, Ms. Banda, Mr. Mpatlele. You see this row here, these are fellow board members for Sci-Bono Discovery Center. Therefore, Professor King Costa from Wcgr will not be liable for these awards. I indemnify you. Professor King Costa does not need introduction because he's the one that opened the conference earlier on in the morning from Global Center for Academic Research, partner to WCQR in terms of bringing this beautiful conference to the continent Africa. And now I'll be handing over to him. I don't know whether he's too short or too tall that he's sitting down. I will have to make sure that he stands up to come and take over. And I'm gonna be leaving you with him while going to the other demonstration at Domestic 1A. Thank you very much. Then he is yours now.
Thank you.
Where is the laptop?
No, they're connecting me down there. Thank you so much, Program Director. We're gonna have a very great session, an interactive session, but as well as a session whereby we're gonna be focusing on thinking and asking ourselves questions with regard to the demo that I'm going to do. And I'm hoping to see it on the screen now, but we are looking at using qualitative evidence synthesis. This is absolutely very, very important that we address that aspect of how can qualitative evidence synthesis be used as a research design, and can it actually inform full, complete thesis? There are many, many questions about that globally. And so that's what the demo that I'm going to do will focus. So I would like as well as, okay, I know I'll ask somebody else as well to get questions online. I greet you online. If those that are on Zoom and you've got questions, please write them down as we continue. And in here as well, if you've got a question, I'll always take questions as we go on. So qualitative evidence synthesis. Okay, let me start this. Feel relaxed because it's a little bit different from a speech. It's a demo stroke workshop to look at the possibilities of using literature as a full study. That's what this whole thing is about. So we're looking at qualitative evidence synthesis. I actually like this podium. I can lean like this and everything as well. So I'm trying to crack jokes. My jokes are boring, so just laugh with me. Because for me, I thought that was a joke. All righty. But maybe I should stand here so that I can see. I can't see that side. It's very close. Can the team help me to put it a little bit backwards so that I can see? These are the outcomes of what I'm going to be talking about in this demo. Thank you. Thank you. A little bit further again. That's it. I can see. So we're going to look at, we need to understand the elements of the Costa theory because that's the foundation of how we look at research. And I'm glad that I'm talking about a Costa theory. It probably could inspire a lot of scholars as well to go back home and see how we can use a theory that you formulate. Part of doing a PhD, Dr. Tanya, you'll agree with me that it's not only to write a study, a nice and a beautiful study with recommendation and there. A PhD specifically, even a doctorate, it's very, very important that there is a strategy that you've learned. I was inspired by Professor Elmarie from the University of the Northwest when we first went to meet her, Professor Lebesi, when we were starting our practice, the Global Center for Academic Research. We went there and we were going to partner. We're very excited about the association she runs is the association called Society of, it's management scientists. I've forgotten exactly what that is called, but it's management scientists. But she raised a concern and said, in Africa, we don't see theory. We don't see any theory. Then there I am. I go to Portugal to a conference, this conference. And a professor from Southampton University and another one from Manchester, they start raising the problem again and saying, most of scholars in Africa are using epistemologies from the North. We don't see theory coming down in Africa. So we felt challenged when I came back. I felt challenged to look at a theory that can help students that are doing postgraduate studies to make it easier. Because generally I am a coach. That's my profession. I'm a coach. So I wanted to see how can we actually use coaching instead of traditional supervision, or how can we have research supervisors working together with coaching, or even integrating the styles of coaching in research supervision. So that's how the Costa model, and I'll be talking about that model. I've already given you a prelude onto it. And then we'll understand QES is qualitative research. That is not the same as the normal qualitative research, because you don't go around collecting data from people. So if you've got questions, you'll continue to ask. And then we'll look at its value in the entire scholarship, and also locate it within typologies of qualitative evidence synthesis. So that's the Costa model. And this model can see it sitting in the mind. It's assumed, those that are doing psychology, that the mind is somewhere in the head. But I also know that there is another dichotomy that says the mind is not in the head. What is in the head is the brain. And the mind is it's a metaphysical aspect. And they try to look at mind-body connection. And so the body would have the brain, and the brain would work with all aspects of the body and send signals about what it has to do. But I had a problem when I was developing this theory, and I had to locate it within thinking rather, and say we still believe we think in our head. So you'll see that Costa is not Costa as the originator of the theory, but is the Costa because our belief is that every language starts with concepts. I don't know why I'm coughing. I think I've got a little bit of stage fright. It's different from introducing a conference. That's another joke. I thought you'll laugh. Imagine if you had hired me to be your MC and I was bringing these jokes and people were not excited at all. Loss of money. But the Costa is a very, very foundational dynamic of every language. And research is a language, colleagues. You need to understand at least key constructs. If you are in management and you get a position, I do believe when you interview people, what you're looking at is, do they understand concepts of this institution? Do they understand, if you are interviewing them at Sci-Bono, do they understand the science centers, for instance? Do they understand what we want? That's language. It's located within Costa. If they are undertaking a research activity, do they understand philosophical assumptions? We've got people who come up with degrees. They even say that I've got a doctor of philosophy. but there is no philosophy into it. So those are foundational aspects of what Costa stands about within the C part. And then it says, when we understand the foundational dynamics in research, and we're talking about ontology, we're talking about, epistemology and all those kind of things. We say that scholars, before rushing to say my topic is, they need to understand these foundational dynamics. They need to understand them so that they are able to locate them. Now I'm talking conceptual analysis. So they are able to dissect these concepts and know when you're talking about this, you're talking about it. Look, I repeat, research is a language. Just like Swahili is a language, English is a language. I am learning Swahili because I'm persuaded to say Swahili is an African language, but I must understand its foundational dynamics so that I can speak Swahili. I'm speaking English because I understand dynamics. Those that are in accounting, they know that for you to actually do well in accounting, you need to understand the language of accounting. So even research, if scholars are not grounded on the foundational principles, and scholars come rushing and say, my topic, I want to do this topic. I want to do this. And say, wait. You need a language to understand the topic. So that's what concepts are about. Once concepts are understood, it's the intention, the objective, not research objective, but the intention that you have an objective you hold as a researcher. Where do you want to actually go? Once you know where you want to go, and that's where a research proposal comes in, because it crafts a journey that you want. And once you know there, then the S is so critical, and most of this workshop will be focusing on the S, because the S talks about literature. Colleagues, I have a problem, and those students that I've worked with, whether within South Valley, because our students are actually students of South Valley University based in Zambia. And we've got the Vice Chancellor of South Valley University, my boss, sitting in here and hear what I'm saying. Professor, can you stand up that they may see you? That's Professor Trevor Kaile. Right. So our students at South Valley, they understand the importance of the S when they write literature. Because literature, there is nothing like a good article, for instance. Yeah? Every literature we go through, it must be critically appraised. The first instance we go and say, this is a good article, I already pick up selection bias. And that's a flaw to your protocol. So when you say it's a good article, what motivated you to say it's a good article? How do you then appraise literature? So we're saying we've come to a time now that scholarship is not just based on what is good because I liked it. It should be good because it's actually meets the appraisal criteria. And we'll look at that in qualitative evidence synthesis. And we say in this workshop, in this demo, you can actually use these principles even in a research that is not within this paradigm that I'm talking about. So that is the S. S is important because it says what is happening, the situation. And for you to define the situation, you need to understand literature, because literature exposes or opens the door to the narrative that is being debated, the current narrative. Here is a scholar who writes, they don't know when to use old narratives and new narratives. So you've got a scholar writing about literature review, but they're quoting something of 1992, Professor Singh. And they say it's happening now. But they are talking about the current situation. So how do we use old literature and new literature? This is what we actually teaching students and show that how you connect that. There's nothing wrong with old literature. It's actually good, particularly if you've got a trend and you're demonstrating a trend of events that have happened there, that still happening here, or how they are actually changing. So literature needs to be appraised. And when we appraise literature as well, who are your seminal authors? Who are your gurus? You can't just write and start quoting King Costa, who's not known anyway. But you can use King Costa as supplemental on what they said. But the gurus are important, and we'll show you some softwares that are actually critical in doing that. And then once you know what is happening around, and I met another a friend, Dr. Tanya, who says he defended his proposal at one of the leading universities, and that's the university where you are. And he says, when I sat in front of the panel, and I had read literature, but I had appraised literature itself, the panel had nothing to say. They said, go ahead. They were so impressed. So literature is the foundation, colleagues. Esteemed scholars, thinkers, and creators of knowledge, literature is very important. And literature can be literature that is written. There can be oral literature as well. That is why I am able to talk about the Khosana principle, which is my grandmother principle, because that one is oral literature. And you heard Professor Rosario, who is a guru in research methods as well. You heard her talking about oral literature even in her study. It's something that esteemed scholars, academic institutions are also not able to deal with it because they want epistemology. And epistemology for them is only one way. But we want to encourage and start thinking about these as scholars. Devil them. Don't take it as I say. Scholarship is not just to take and eat. Scholarship is to question. When you are questioned, it means that your output is interesting scholars. Scholarship is not to tear you apart, but is to build you and show that you are now in the level of your peers. So let's get scholars to understand that. So that's the S. Now, T is the methodology. We at the Global Center for Academic Research, we actually call ourselves research methodologists. And I do believe that somewhere in the year, we're going to be launching an association of research methodologists because methodology is critical and the logical flow of events in methodology and knowing which to use. Now, qualitative research is extremely complex. Because many students will say, when you read their thesis, my study was on qualitative research. I conducted interviews and there were many participants and I used thematic analysis and all that. But qualitative research, again, is just a paradigm. So we've got paradigms over paradigms. We've got paradigms up there, which could be constructivist, which could be interpretivist. We go down, we've got a paradigm of how we view this through logic. Then we've got a paradigm of a tradition, which is either qualitative, quantitative, or mixed. Still, we need to talk about the design we've used or the strategy. That's where the problem is. And what I'm going to present is another type of a design that can be considered. So you would see the flow and you'd relate the flow to Saunders' research onion. It makes it easier. Those that teach research methods just teach Saunders. Because most of others, there are no steps. But with Saunders, there's step by step. It gives you an idea of a logical flow right up to presenting your abstract, which is A here, the quality of your output. So that is understanding the Costa model. So I've already given these pointers. So as I move on, now I show qualitative evidence synthesis. Please, if you've got questions on any stage, have them. Because again, here, we've got a myriad of terms that are used. So what you're going to do is that we're going to be following what the Cochrane collaboration suggests. You've got, in non-intrusive research, there are organizations that have been established over the years to make sure that quality is maintained. That is Cochrane, that looks at public health and health issues, health-related matters. And then you've got Joanna Briggs Institute, or Cochrane is based in London in the UK. If it has moved to another city in the UK, bear with me. Last I checked, it's London when I was preparing this presentation. It's Cochrane collaboration. So they come up with protocols that should be followed because this kind of method, we are not collecting data from participants. So we need to ensure that there is credibility in the output itself. So you've got Cochrane collaboration, and then you've got Joanna Briggs Institute in Australia. that started, and Johanna was actually apparently one of the leading nurses in Australia. Please verify that for me again. But Johanna Briggs Institute was focusing on nursing and nursing education as well, and dealing with patients. So there's still a relationship with healthcare. But then you've got the Campbell collaboration that is in the US that looks at social science and business and where we are in political sciences and all that. And these are collaborations that come with standards. So if you in your institution were choosing to use non-intrusive research or literature-based study, it's very, very paramount that students understand that. So it's not just a literature study, but it's a literature that is based on a particular protocol. As a matter of fact, their proposal would be based on a protocol as well. Okay, so these are the terms that are there. So with qualitative evidence synthesis, Cochrane suggested that it be called QES. You might find other papers that say qualitative systematic reviews. But then it's a typology again, systematic reviews, or others say systematic literature reviews. So I'll try by all means to debunk these. Okay? So that's a myriad of literature. Let's look at qualitative evidence synthesis. So I've just talked about these institutions, the Cochrane, the JBI, Johanna Briggs Institute, and the Campbell collaboration. I've addressed them. They are authorities that ensure that there is credibility, there is a rigor, believability, and trustworthiness of non-participant-based studies. Now, a lot of people like to talk about desktop research when you do, and we who are followers of systematic reviews, we need to request that all literature is desktop, because desktop is a concept of using this interface of the computer. You know, your computer, that part is called desktop. So all literature is desktop. So let's debunk desktop. Where does it originate? It originates in the field of market research, where researchers within that field will sit in a library, a literal library, and take books from the library, put them on the desk, and try to understand whether they're working on a particular concept. They would put everything, magazines, newspapers, and all that. That's where desktop study comes from. So I really used to protect when they say literature-based study is a desktop. It's not really desktop to us who are running with this kind of typology of methods. Okay, so those are the organizations I talked about. But what is actually qualitative evidence synthesis? Known as a qualitative systematic review, it's a type of the systematic reviews. I'll debunk that. You will hear me say systematic review, and then again say systematic review and systematic. So I'll try to actually debunk that. But let me see. Is there any question so far? So that I'm not the only one talking. It's a demo. I'm demonstrating. So it's not a speech, as I said. If there's any question, I'll keep on doing intervals, and you've got questions, please, I'll ask. And I'll even ask anyone in here, colleagues, to participate and help me so that we are all involved. So, but that is where I am now. So you locate, you select, you critically evaluate. Now, that's where the crux is. We're going to talk about this critical evaluation. So the time has passed whereby you just take literature and say, I like this study, and I think it is important. It must go through the acid test and pass. If it doesn't, it either is a low quality study. And if it's a low quality study, it compromises the truth you want. We've seen the value of this in when there is a big problem like COVID-19. You might know that there were a lot of people who says, and I'm not creating any debate, but I want you to reflect. There are a lot of people who use different conventions, and others would say, I used ivermectin and I got healed. Others would say, I used this and all that. But if there isn't any conclusive evidence, and conclusivity is not you just being healed, but there ought to be a number of studies that are critically evaluated. You'd have seen Professor Nzowi you go to the, if anybody goes to our national department's website, you'd find a report that says that was not accepted as a method of intervention in South Africa because there were no adequate studies informing a decision. So we'll look at adequate studies. How do you get there? So even if a study is good, when we want to solve a problem in business, when we want to solve a problem in practice, we don't just take any study. There ought to be conclusive studies. Another interesting study is those that were looking at hydroxychloroquine as an intervention as well. There were no conclusive evidence that it can work and that they could not accept those. Okay, right? So anytime, even when we engage me, let's talk about conclusive evidence. If there isn't any evidence scientifically, we don't have value. Even if it is oral literature, which I'll get in later on, because it also needs to be qualified. All right. So let's look at the review function. So you view, you inspect, you can check Google as well, and then you examine. I'm mentioning that because you'll find many, many descriptions. What is that? But it means you are doing it over and over and over again. And that is a practice of a qualitative researcher. A qualitative researcher knows the principle of reading word by word, line by line, over and here the way I say it, word by word. You see, I'm rhyming because we've got it that way. It's like it's iterative. You can't just read once and say, I've read it. There ought to be continued engagement, and we call it a principle of immersion. You are immersed in your data. You become one with your data. You are one with your data. That is why a qualitative researcher, at the end of it, they must tell us what they learned. One of the studies that I was involved in before I became a researcher. In research, I'll call you my colleague because we are interested in study of indigenous systems. I was studying spirituality, and because there was a need for me to go to certain aspects, I knew very well that I will learn things that will change me, and I don't know whether I'm ready. How will I look at myself after I have known? Remember, sometimes what you don't know is better than what you know. And research changes us. We get to know certain things. In the time I worked on HIV since 1994, and one of the biggest problems is for me to know that this man is HIV positive then, and his wife doesn't know. So what you know can actually harm you. Okay. Let me continue. So you must go on and inspect. And as you inspect, there ought to be a change in you. I really love that, and you can see it repeatedly. So now the question is, colleagues, there are vice chancellors, there are deans in here, there are head of departments in here, there are members of faculty from different universities. There is a question. How acceptable are SRs for postgraduate research? That's a big question. How can we look at that alone? So many universities have got, for instance, professors saying a PhD by publication. I'm not talking that one. I'm not talking a PhD by publication. I'm talking about systematic reviews, because publications, when you look at that PhD, it's a different dimension. If you look at this one we're talking about, we emphasize on how literature was critically appraised for evidence. So there are many, many institutions in healthcare as well. We've seen Cochrane systematic review as a PhD thesis and alternative with numerous advantages. There are advantages. A scholar who's been taken into systematic review happens to gather more knowledge on the problem at hand, as opposed to the one who is actually not exposed to this method of review. Even if it can be used as a component, literature review in your study. But we need in these times where we are, scholars that get out with masters or their PhD, and managers who really understand how to review reports. You get reports in your institution. You make decisions based on your reports. As a matter of fact, colleagues in here, that your strategy, I can ask you right now, I say, which strategy are you using? You probably will be saying, I am using John Maxwell, or you'll be saying, I am using those that are in change. I've heard that University of Johannesburg, some scholars that have said good things about our work on change, published work, and they say it's actually informing them. So when we write about change, do we just write about change? No, we'll be saying outcome model. We'll be saying that model and that model and that model. So it's very important then that you look at those numerous opportunities that are offered, okay, even if it is only part. There is UJ, I talked about it just now. So a lady called Wilma Ten Hemaloy wrote a beautiful study propounding for the use of this method in postgraduate studies. So do get that article. It's a very, very beautiful piece. I've also seen that the University of the Western Cape, is that the one I'm seeing there? Yes, they have actually, as one of my colleagues that I work with is Professor Lloyd Leach. He is not here, but we've got series of post-conference sessions, actually 52 weeks packed of, we call them research dialogue, every Wednesday. So you know that I can promise you now that Professor Leach and other scholars from other institutions will be there. So he's from the University of the Western Cape, but they are using only the aspect of systematic reviews called meta-analysis, which uses quantitative methods as well. And then you can see, so I'm trying to encourage you that you can actually start to involve those that can hold workshops in your institutions. You can actually have a systematic review-based type of study. As a matter of fact, I have actually supervised quite a number of those myself. All right, so you can see how many universities actually have looked at that. I'm gonna just write fast. We will make the slide available for you thereafter. But there are institutions, but institutions are divided as well, based on capacity. One of my students in another university here in South Africa where I'm supervising, he wanted to do a systematic review because he said, I want to get in depth. Remember, systematic review is within qualitative research, and qualitative research gives an aspect of in-depth. And he said, I want to get in depth, but his university did not allow. And that's how I got involved in that university. And he said, then I know a professor who actually is who knows this approach. Can I get him to be my supervisor? They looked at my profile. They said, yes. We did a very sterling university. I won't mention, please don't ask me that university, but we did start it was a master's study, a beautiful study, and it was critically appraised. It had a number of things. And then that university now, we are working with them to make sure that there's capacity on that method itself. So you can see they are divided. But briefly, it can be taken by Cochrane. Cochrane would do that all the time because they are advising dimensions of thought leadership in healthcare, in social science, and as well as in business. And you'll see that Campbell collaboration. But regulatory bodies, just like Professor, I told you that the Department of Health, when it came to ivermectin, as much as you got healed from COVID-19, presumably so, but it could not actually be used because there was no conclusive evidence. And this type of method is for high level of evidence. They actually put a triad for it, and it's right on top of that triad. Okay? And then you can see it can use as well by master's and doctoral students. Honestly, we insist with our students, whether you're doing primary research, your literature should go through critical appraisal. So there's no literature lately that you can get it through without being critically appraised. Because students need to learn. These are people who are going to be doctors thereafter. So they need to learn how to critically appraise literature itself. Okay, so when are they conducted? When there is uncertainty on an intervention, when there is an early development of a policy. So it's critical in policy when you come up with policies, those that deal with policy and practice. So it's very, very important to involve this type of method as opposed to just taking reports and saying you did a desktop study. So this critically appraising those, it's absolutely important, okay? And then when general or overall picture of evidence is needed, and that is where then you look at the methods, how we use it for evidence. All right, let me just move on. Just get to typology. I love the typology because you'll all talk with me. So now we're going to talk. Remember, I'm a teacher. I am a teacher. So for you to remember how to use and to create an interest, I would like you to say something after me and say it loud so that you know what I'm driving? Those are in psychology. I'm going to drive it out of your rational mind because as I am talking to you in this demo, a lot of you are probably looking at how I lift. Others are looking at how my leg is standing. There's so many things because the rational mind is a very, very busy space to get something else. But when it goes to the subconscious mind, it stays there, it dwells. How did I learn that? I learned it as a study skill from my teacher back then, Professor, when we still had provinces. In South Africa, we had, sorry, not provinces, we had Bantustans. Bantustan, is it Bantustan or Bantustan? Stan, yes. Yes, but we had countries within the country here. And Bophuthatswana was one of those interesting ones. And now I'm able to talk to people stay there because I could count islands of Bophuthatswana. And I would say, Tabanchu, Taung, Tlapin, Tarukhanyisa, Mulopo, Ditsobotla, Lihurucha, Madikwe, Mankweba Fuking. Oh, Dimureteli, there were 12. And that was in 1984. So I'm trying to show you the power of subconscious mind. I don't have to think twice. It becomes in terms of SAQA here, our authority here for education. They say there's foundational competence, practical competence, reflexive competence. You don't think about that. It becomes you. Can we all count letters of the alphabet? Let's start, right? I'm not hearing you. You know it very well. So let's start from the end. Let's go. It does. You know why you did that? You know why you did that? I like what you're doing. Thanks so much but now you are thinking. First, you didn't think. Absolutely. So that's the power side. So my students, when I teach them with graphics. I ask them because these are CEOs, people who've led business and all. It's very difficult to supervise those. So you need to seek permission and say to them, I am going to give you baby steps. Can I get that permission? Then they say yes, because they want you to coach them. They want to, they come from different universities. Then you say thereafter, say, this is going to be serious. You are going to be like a baby who's learning to walk. Are you ready for that? They say yes. I say, thank you. So what we developed a theory with regard to systematic reviews for you to learn and know them. I teach mnemonics. So one of those to locate, now we're locating qualitative evidence synthesis. If you remember my objective, I don't know why my slide is not there. I don't have it here. Can you put the slide back? Thank you so much. So what we are doing is that if you locate systematic review, there are 14 types. 14 types of reviews, and you need to know them. Right? So I created a mnemonic called Telmoc SMS. Dr. Nandi, come quickly and then give that, because you are smiling when I talk about it. I don't know whether she'll pass the test, but she just had that test recently. I think it's still fresh in your mind.
My topic was based on a systematic literature review, but I want to also have some sort of indemnification of some sort, that the day has been too long. The night has been very short. I might not call out all of them, But, okay, let me not look at this.
So that they can see the power of this tool I use, a study skill for postgraduate students. So give me types of 14 types of systematic reviews.
Critical review,
Right?
umbrella review,
Yeah,
a rapid review,
yeah,
mapping,
yes,
a systematic,
yes,
a scope,
yes,
a qualitative evidence synthesis,
yes,
state of the art,
yes,
systematized.
yes. Now that's 9, but you've done
Is
well.
that 9?
Yes, you've done. You can give a hand clap. Don't know. Overview. Yes. Yeah. Ah, you see, they're coming out now. So we are using. Yes, give you a round of applause for that. Encourage her. You're getting a doctor back to class. So that's what you do, because Socrates said, I have discovered that the more I know, right? The more I know, the more I don't know. That is good scholarship. We don't know it all. So let's not have our qualifications limiting us to go forward. That is why you get a doctor. Right now, like I said, these 52 weeks, we've got students and doctors and professors and all that. We dabble with these philosophical issues, because when we are a collective, it's easy to remember. So Kelmock, SMS, that's what I created. And it helped me because I could say, as you said, C, critical review, U, umbrella review, R, rapid review, L, literature review, M, mapping review, O, overview, Q, qualitative evidence synthesis, S, systematic review, M, mixed methods review. See, I'm locating that, but then you're all looking at me. So it's not like he knows and he remembers them. I'm just showing you in this demo the power of tools. You know what happened? I studied law at the University of Transkei. At second year, it didn't work because I did not have a tool. But now that I am old, I'm reminded of Paul, who says, when I was a boy, I did things as a boy. Now I'm a man. And I should have been coached that you study with tools, postgraduate studies. You can't just walk in there and read these big books. Raise the other one, Dr. Nandidatis. I've got one of the books there. That is qualitative research in the Asian context, written by the lady who was here. Look, edited by the lady who was in here. Look how big that is. If you are given that as a text and you are a new master's student, or you just think, this is not for me. So you need, in this demo, you need to recognize the importance of frameworks, even with literature. Students are saying, hey, IMW, look at their literature. They've written so much. Saying, yeah, the content is good, but it's not well situated within your objectives. How do you operationalize that? So they have learned through this. So here's your Kelmock SMS. So you can see curl, and then it gives you critical review, but it also shows you that its aims, what its aims is, and to what extent should you appraise literature. You can see umbrella review, and then so the student, when they say, I did a review of literature, you as a supervisor ask, what type of review? Because for me, when a student say, even in primary, in interactive research, where they were interacting with participants, even when they say they've done a case study, I say, which case study did you use? Was it a single case study? Was it a multiple case study? They say I use phenomenology. Which type? Was it a transcendental phenomenology? Or was it a hermeneutic phenomenology? Even if they say they use it, I say, which framework did you use? Was it Mostaka? Or was who? It's very important. They can't come out and not knowing these things, because they are going to practice. They are going to business. I tend to think, Professor Nzobi, some of the problems we have in business, it's not really corruption at all, but it's these issues that we're talking about. Unfortunately, we don't have any language to locate those businesses that are falling down. Many a times, it's because of these thinking strategies, the understanding of thinking, and because this is informed by thinking. I don't think many of them, but it's an issue of management because of your research division or whoever is giving you, not giving you literature the way they should. Okay, so there's your literature review. There's your rapid review. You know the song that we are doing? There they are. Any questions so far? Can I take the jacket off? I'm getting excited. So that is just the CalMOC. So keep it at CalMOC at least. You can't just write a literature and say, I'm asking you, what type of literature were you doing? It's a doctoral study, so let's take it there. All right. So there's SMS. This one is easy to remember because we're doing SMS all the time. Okay, we're talking WhatsApp these days, but that's still, some of us old school, we still say, WhatsApp me by SMS. You know? Yeah. So these are the typologies. Very, very important for you to read. And what we're going to do is that those that are in this demo, we are going to give you an access to the portal as well, so that you can actually look even at associated literature on these. Okay? So let me continue the demo, but I'm not getting questions, so I don't know how to continue, but let me continue. All right. So what are its characteristics? First, a synthesis of qualitative research. And when I say qualitative research, that means you can't go to qualitative evidence synthesis if you don't understand qualitative research first. You can't go there if so it's not an alternative and an easy way. You see that? It's not an alternative, because I'll tell you, if you don't understand qualitative research, you will not be able to appraise qualitative studies. And appraisal of qualitative studies need quite a number of skills. And we're going to look at 10 critical skills that you must have when you appraise qualitative studies. So you can't do all these without having done that. So I created this again. I call it Atmos SR. Say it with me, Atmos SR. Yes. So as scholars and doctors, we are allowed, Professor Singh, am I right, to create mnemonics and even publish them. That's the advantage of being a doctor. Okay. You create theories. So you won't find it anywhere. I created that as well as a teacher. Okay. And it says, characteristics first, it must be explicit. It must be transparent, methodical process, and objective. It must be you are detached because you're dealing with literature. So issues of bias must be accounted for. And it must follow particular standards. It is standardized, it has a structure, and it is reproducible. Let us remember that if you cook some beautiful meal, and all of us that come from different countries, you will have a taste of South African food tomorrow evening as we go out. Some of you might be interested in that particular meal. Now imagine that somebody doesn't give you, and then you say, I was in South Africa, in Soweto, and not Soweto, I'm trying to be global, but it's actually Soweto. Okay, so I was in Soweto, and I ate this meal, and I want to try and cook it. Without reproducibility, it's going to be flawed. So that's critical. That's how it must. Furthermore, it also must be comprehensive. Here, we're talking about even the literature when you get it. There is a difference between comprehensive literature search and exhaustive literature search. So scholars need to see that. So they must demonstrate how comprehensive was their method of collecting data be. But imagination is absolutely critical. You are a creator. A researcher is a creator, colleagues. A researcher, you are building something. You must be very imaginative and creative, stimulating and topical, well written and attractive and publishable. I've read some theses and I would look at a PhD thesis and I would learn from it. I would actually think this is a masterclass for me. The way it's written, I can learn, and scholars need to know how to use these deep words with simple words. At Harvard, we call it the grandmother principle. I say we because I'm also a faculty member there. So it's called grandmother principle. In other words, what you've written, if it can be read by a grandmother back in Matatiele or back in Bindura, or if you're from Namibia, back in Katutura, if that grandmother can be able to read it, then we know that you are a researcher and you meet this grandmother principle. It must not be implicit, opaque, chaotic, subjective, variable, and idiosyncratic. It must not be like that. It should not, there should not be chaos when I read. Because chaotic literature does not necessarily mean it's bad literature. But the structure, this, and then you are looking for logical, there's no logic. The role of qualitative evidence synthesis is not for just learning, it's to inform policy. Imagine if you were writing about an alternative medicine for what I'm going through. We believe in indigenous systems, and I actually posted a study on indigenous systems at one of students at University of the Free State, where I'm very proud. That study, we even went to the United Nations with it. In Rwanda, we invited there because we're writing about indigenous systems. We're writing about indigenous systems and herbs and all that. That's why I'm very, I believe that there could be something that provides healing and all that. But methods, if it is chaotic and very, very subjective. So, and careful where you come from, because as Africans, we can tend, and I'm saying this even to you, the international community who are watching, where you see me, there or there, I don't know where the cameras are, but wherever your country is, it's very important that you don't come with supervening concepts. Qualitative research allows for multiple perspectives. So that is why it should not be like this, because it could be bias-based when it's like this. So there should be method. Any question again? Talk to me. Engage me. Otherwise, this hour is going to be very difficult. Yes, Professor Singh? Where's the mic? Is there a mic there for him? Engage me, Professor Singh. Feel messy for me and talk to me.
No, thank you very much. It's not a question. I just want to contribute,
yes,
but to clarify something at the same time.
Yes.
So in the first column, the word objective.
Yes.
So because it's qualitative research and you've clarified that as qualitative researchers, we immerse ourselves in a community or in a problem. So people may feel that now you're subjective because you are in it.
Yeah.
But you're asking them to be out of it now because, so how do you do that? And quite often, when you look at literature reviews, the problem is that the writer of that literature review only selects those studies and that bit of literature which supports their way of thinking and their school of thought and their ideas.
Yeah.
So this is, I think, just to clarify what you mean by objective.
Thank you, Prof.
Is that you've got to remove yourself from the study in this sense that you can be objective, because otherwise you're just going to take a whole bunch of evidence that supports you, but meanwhile they can be very relevant, even if there's one study or one author who disagrees. This is not a democracy. It's
Ah.
not about numbers.
Yeah.
It's about depth of argument, and therefore that one can be right.
Wow. Thank you so much. Give Professor Singh. Yes. Can you imagine how it helped me? At least that, makes this session to be interactive. I've seen that, Dr. Caswell, don't worry, I'm not going to ask you this. I've seen that as well, this issue of bias, and that needs objective in theological studies. We already are biased for God and everything, and we look at papers that talk well for God, regardless of how they were written. I've seen that. Okay, let me continue. Thank you so much, Prof. So I've already covered these elements, so that means first part of my session is ended. I have talked about the elements of the Costa model, and I went into it one by one. I've also located qualitative evidence as a research methodology. And yes, that was the last one, but I've shown you how many universities are using. So the next session that I'm taking you through is the review process itself. So because that's very, very important. So even if you are doing a literature review, you must have a question that is in line with your study as well. But if you are doing using qualitative evidence synthesis as a full study, so the review process is absolutely very important. And there are protocols, and we'll go through these protocols that we can use. All right. And then identify relevant studies. Where do you identify these relevant studies? It should be reported. I'll give you an example of those. And then assess eligibility careful. So any study does not earn a right, even if a title was good, because we need to assess eligibility. Actually, there would be 4 stages that will show you based on the protocols. So the review process also goes to the extraction of data that is required, as Prof. Singh just said. It's not just the studies that you want, but the studies that are crucial for answering your question. Now the critical appraisal, that's where I'm actually looking forward to go. How do you actually critically appraise your literature, particularly if you are submitting for qualitative evidence synthesis? So that means you are excluding certain type of studies, you are including certain type of studies, and you are actually reviewing them. Now, qualitative studies are good because they help us to understand the lived experiences of people. And you might want to describe them, but you might want to understand as well. You also want to understand how these experiences are constructed. And you further want to understand the meanings around these constructed experiences. And then you want to understand the setting itself and the people involved in actually constructing these experiences. So that's what we want. If you are a manager and you've got employees, you want to understand the meanings attached to your institution, which you call organizational culture. This culture itself, this paradigm, what does it mean, and how does it actually impact on productivity of my organization? It's very, very crucial that you understand. That's where the problem is, my good professors, because your cultural studies or your cultural strategies, even the change, Prof, that we write about, we've been challenged now. Now we wrote about Ubuntu as a model for inquiry. Because you go to every organization, when they come up with a change or a culture study, they would use, Professor Singh, paradigms that do not talk to this culture you are investigating. So companies spend thousands or millions and millions, but there's no change. Because even the way that we interpret this study is defined by these epistemologies, which are good, but perhaps they could be used to work together with the Southern epistemologies so that we can understand this culture. Imagine you are using ADCA model, but you do not have a Dlamini model. but you are dealing with the people who understand how to be a Dlamini, how to be a Mugwena, and they constitute 98% of your employee work or of your workforce. Your culture implementation is based on a perspective foreign to them, but that works somewhere. That is why I said, I believe that if we could actually practically use studies, science in running our organizations, I think we can see a lot of change, because we need to be very, very practical. Imagine doing a study about a people using a method that does not talk to them. The outcome will be good. The protocols will be good, but the study will not help you achieve what you want. Because, for instance, in the African context, with regard to if somebody has passed on, a fellow employee, it has a lot of an impact in terms of cultural thing. Every time in the evening, employees need to go to their fellow employees' home and go and pray. But you are running an institution and you want them here. So I'm making an example on those kind of issue, cultural impacts on how we are actually doing things. So, and then the synthesis as well, and the method of disseminating, I'll get into that with regard to review. But how is it used? It is used to explore these barriers and facilitates to delivery and uptake of services. I just talk about practice and policies. It's also used to explore these differing views. It's also used to inform prioritization of services, where evidence, where what works is required. Right? So here are these types of reviews. There are Cochrane reviews that need to follow a protocol of Cochrane. There are meta-ethnographic reviews as well. And then you've got quite a number of them, e.g. content analysis is actually a matter of a review on its own. Content analysis can be used for data analysis. As a matter of fact, most students have used content analysis only as data analysis. But it is actually a research design, a full research design. And it allows to be both qualitative and both quantitative. Okay. And then interpretive description studies as well. You can actually use qualitative evidence synthesis there. But let's go to these characteristics. Okay, I've gone there. I hope it's not taking me back. We've gone there. Sorry for that. All right. So the methods and protocols, we're going to look for the purposes. So the QES is looking to interpret explanations. Remember, in qualitative research, the key is, why am I doing what I do when I do it? So these interpretive explanations of the meanings and experiences, why are employees behaving the way they do? You know, I was asked a lot about certain things that inform our policies and all that. So the key thing is, why are policies created the way they are created, or, you know, yes, produced the way they are produced. Whereas meta-analysis is for prediction. Okay, and you can see, colleagues, sampling, just like in primary studies, we are doing purposive here, but that side we are doing exhaustive. Do you think you can tell me what the difference is? What do you think exhaustive is? Exhaustive search of information. So, yeah? The mic is not around. Okay, mic people, work with me. Okay. Right? Yes, you can lift your hand. You wanted to say something. So if you do an exhaustive search, and if you got a student that say they did an exhaustive search, how do you deal with that language in a qualitative evidence synthesis?
I would imagine exhaustive means there's nothing left to sample.
Exactly. Exactly. So it would mean that and it's very difficult. When I was doing my PhD and on coaching, and I said in class, we're taught by Professor Libis, where is he? He used to be my supervisor. He's the chairperson of our institution now. We've got the vice chancellor of South Valley, but we've got chairperson of Wcgr. Prof, maybe you understand again, you look at them, they see this chairperson. This is my supervisor. You can imagine, you look at them, Prof, you can imagine the difficulty of standing in front of someone who produced you. It's very, very hard. I feel like I'm under test here. I feel like I'm under test. So, but he was teaching me, remember, Prof, and we were talking about coaching, and I said there is no literature in here. And a fellow student then showed thousands and thousands of literature. It means I had searched in a wrong portal. So when you say exhaustive, you need to say, I've searched the right and appropriate portals. You are confident. So your literature can be used to inform policy. So the best way to do that, you demarcate your time and say, I looked at literature between that year and that year. And I looked at literature that looks at this, that excludes this, and that, which I'm not going to get into this demo to make sure that I go to the next part. So your question would actually look at any of these. In the study that we are conducting with Dr. Nandi and the team in the office, now we decided to use another one called Spider. But sometimes it's even PICO without C. It's PICO without C. Okay, these are just tools that we use to refine questions. So supervisors, if your student is using qualitative evidence synthesis or even any of systematic reviews, do not bother them by having multiple questions. There is only one review question because it's one study. They may have sub-questions that link to the objectives, but the review question is one. And that review question answers it's for a specific question and a specific problem. For instance, if you looked at Peacock, let's say PICO, you're looking at the population that you are interested to investigate and the intervention you are proposing. If we're looking at, for instance, education and the outcome of results right now, we should be specific and say, what intervention are we actually proposing? And then we should come up with an intervention or a phenomenon of interest. So there will still be I. And then we'll have C. There must be something we are comparing to. So it's like some form of evaluation. And there must be an outcome of the study. So already from the question, you have the full study reflected only in the question. So the full study is already there. So that's one of the protocols that you can use. So the stages as well, and I'm just going to get to this somewhere soon. Those are the stages. Stage one is identify literature, start sampling, and search strategy is critical. What search strategy are you using? You report on these. It could be a strategy on the variables that of your or keywords or key concepts. It could be you are using that, but also you need to expand and support and say, why did you use what you used? So there ought to be a rationale. Even the sampling strategy. How do you sample literature? Let's talk about that. And purposefully so. How do you do that? It's a very critical question. So that's something that we must talk about. Then stage two, now that you've got all the article, let's say we say how can or could study skills improve outcomes of matriculants in the next 5 years? I'll make an example. So you say could, you're already wondering. So you already have a population, you've got an intervention there. Your study skills, population is matriculants. So you've got all these items. If you said that, the question would be now, having collected literature, how then do you use purposive sampling to get it? And once you've done that, you quality appraise, and then you use a Prisma, and we'll show it just now. And then the NTRAC, it's for method of analysis. I'll show that. I hope I am not talking in space. It's a demo. We are saying qualitative evidence as a thesis, a full thesis, or a component of your study. And it's something that you can look at in your institutions, both here, both those that are joining the Azores and both those that are online. It's something that you can look at. It's absolutely very, very interesting. Once you get into this, you don't want to get off your desk. Yeah, so those that are in medicine, I don't know whether Prof. Kaile, our Vice Chancellor, is also a medical person. I don't know whether sitting is what caused my problems or what, I don't know. But when you do literature this way, it's so exciting. You keep on digging and digging and digging and finding things, and it makes it exciting. Okay, Right. This is one of the tools. This software is free. You don't have to pay on it. It's called Hazings Publish or Perish. And Hazings Publish or Perish, I think a number of us know it, or those that don't know it, you can use it. I was recently, for instance, at the Victoria Falls, invited by our partner university there, Bindura University. They were running a conference. Some of the students, they were aware of some of these. So some might not. At GCAR and here, we use this tool. We're using this tool because this tool is a repository of a number of databases that are required for critical search of literature. These databases would be Scopus, would be, okay, let me start with Google Scholar, all right? And then Scopus, Web of Science, and a number of those. So they don't just collect your literature anywhere and avoid going for a lot of gray literature. Gray literature would be your theses. That's good evidence because a number of an examination committee in universities would have said and passed this student, and the student comes out to be a doctor or a master. So we believe that's credible. But familiarize yourself as well with real-time literature in form of articles. Now, there's a danger there. Not all, let me see, how do I become politically correct to scholars as well? That's very, very dangerous. So I've got to be very careful because all published papers have gone through review and they're peer reviewed. Yeah, I've got a solution. I was wondering, how do I deal with this? So in South Africa, we've got what is called Department of Higher Education accredited journals. Yeah, I'm safe now. So rather use DHET accredited journals because other journals out there are actually predator journals. Predator is those journals that are hunting fresh doctors who have been told, if you don't publish, you perish. So they want to publish. They want to have many articles, only to find out that your articles cannot get you recognition that is required because they are in wrong articles. So I'm not going to talk a lot about how you identify because that's not part of this. But this database has got journals that are accredited, are credible. Okay. So you can actually start to use it. But you can see it helps you with a search term. You can see the key term. You can see how articles come out. And you are also able to inform it to give you certain number of articles. Here are the journals that are actually on this platform. You get them free of charge. So Google Scholar, PubMed, and there are even others that are just added now. Is OpenAlex there? So now we've got OpenAlex in there. It's not there, but we've got OpenAlex. So they are continually coming in. These are some of the tools that when someone says, I've done literature, at least first grab it there. It also encourages us as scholars as well that we contribute through also publishing. Any questions so far on the software? At least you could be asking me, how do I get that software? Please ask me something. Yes, sir. The mic. Actually, if the person with the mic can sit in front of me, not in front of me, in front with me, or sit where you can see, there's a hand here. Just a bit of a commercial.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Prof. Can I go ahead? Yeah, I've been synthesizing, so to speak, trying to learn, and I'm not from your space, so I've been trying to marry my space and yours, and I've been very attentive in that regard. There's an aspect that relates to my space, which is the technology space, or 4IR, so to speak. I'm trying to imagine how you can marry, if you've attempted to do so, you can share your experience with us, marry the qualitative research universe with what in my space we call artificial intelligence. And you can share with us whether it's a positive marriage or it's one that's heading for the rocks in terms of how the two can make a difference in a positive way to what we're trying to achieve with qualitative research.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. That's exciting. Dr. Tanya, get ready because I'll call you and you'll come here. We'll talk about qualitative research and we'll actually talk about ChatGPT. Okay, which is AI. What I say?
No, thanks so much. I'm not sure if I have to describe my experiences being delighted, excited, amazed, and mesmerized by our good scholar there. I'm also inspired to ask a question that is about marriage.
Yeah.
And for me, the marriage will also come from what I regard as an important space that influence a lot of what I can call my thought construct process, but also experience that was far beyond what I could have been exposed to pedagogically, if it makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is the public sector experience that also brings a very important dimension of exposure
Yes.
on an international front. How do you bring marriage between this very, very important? And you know, I'm sitting here, I'm like saying, God, if I had the power to decree that politics be revisited, I would say this is a method and methodology that you must integrate into the foundation of learning and teaching for politicians, basic ABC.
Sure.
we'll have different outcomes. I think we'll have different outcomes in terms of, you know, the thought construct process and the depth of those that are in charge, because it's interesting, and it's this, I'll shorten my input. It's interesting that part of what you presented is something that is, I think, a very critical lesson that came from an evolution of centuries of, call it investigative
Yes.
inquiry, if you can call it. But the difference and the problem we have is that you have a theoretic development phase that does not become a propeller and a foundation that drives human society's development.
Yes.
As a result, we have a situation where those that seem to be propelled into very important authoritative structures of governance
Yes.
actually don't have ideas, and ideas are peripheral. They are located exactly where you are.
Yeah.
How do you bring that marriage between a society that must evolve, that must be propelled by the extent of sophistication and advancement that, for instance, where we are in the 21st century, is exactly that level where it is no longer about thinking that a child comes through a helicopter,
Yes.
but we already have a clear and deeper understanding of the, call it the configuration of the blue space
Yes.
environment, which from human evolution started with the 1946 Sputnik penetration of
going
the
up.
skies and of course Apollo. But we have a situation where in the 21st century, human beings that are in charge, that are in government, are actually prehistoric in their thought process. How do you expect, occupying such a very critical driver of development, of change, of advancements of human society, to be propelled to that level where we are, when the ideas are actually not equal to that level and standard? Because honestly, I'm mesmerized. I think you need to educate politicians.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Okay, yes, Prof.
No, I just wanted to amplify the question raised by Ndate Malele on artificial intelligence. I just want to be specific on the use of ChatGPT in knowledge creation. And what does it find expression in systematic review? And secondly, how to promote rigor if it were to be considered as one of the tools? Thanks.
Sure. Myself and Dr. Tanya, she's looking at me. We're gonna deliberate on this, and I'm very excited about that question because I actually seen other universities now are teaching faculty of how to use all artificial intelligence tools. Can we get the slide up again? Yeah. So, for instance, when you see what we need to understand is a full suite of tools that help with which are within the domain of artificial intelligence. And so it's not just, it's a whole array of tools starting with this one. What you are seeing here is just one of those tools that uses artificial intelligence because they are using certain language that when you put certain text, they can try and get what you are trying to look for. We will get in there just now. Now, you've also said a very important aspect, and I liked when you talked about theory. One of the problems that we have with so many studies that we have today, it's because theory is not matched with practice. If you look at the Costa theory, I was challenged because I did not want an abstract theory that I could not implement. One of the first theories besides the Costa, and actually Costa took out that after that, look at the Maslow theory. Hey, should be humbling to say Costa theory when I'm Costa and having worked on it. Getting used to that is very scary. So I'm just being bold to say that. I'll get there where I'm like Professor Maslow that can talk about his Maslow theory. I'm moving towards there. It's still scary to stand in front of scholars at a world conference and talk about Costa theory. But at least I always say, remember, it's concepts, objective, situation, and all that. But coming to what you said, if we can apply a simple concept like the theory of Professor Bloom, that theory talks about thinking and thinking strategies. It makes life much more easier because it looks at 6 levels of thinking. And these levels are divided into higher order and lower order. At lower order, the first thing that we're at least looking at in every study, even in qualitative evidence synthesis, knowledge, it's very important. At least we must start there. We must be able to say, I know something. Let's just start there. At least let me know the way to my house. I need to have knowledge. When I was young in 1974, don't calculate my age, is fine. That's when I did what was called Sub-A. There was a booklet that is so philosophical. It had this woman who's working with, let me say, a wife and a husband, presumably a wife and a husband, and then they walking, there's a donkey between them, and I think there's a child somewhere and something at the back. And then somebody says, but look at that donkey. You all are walking and this donkey is carrying everything. Then the husband takes this whole thing and this cargo, call it cargo for the lack of a better word. And then the child is going to lead the donkey and the woman is going to walk behind. And then somebody else would be saying, so many things until one time the family ended up carrying the cargo and then and carrying the donkey. Because if you don't have knowledge, it means any other road will get you there. And that's dangerous for a scholar. Everybody says this, and people can be convincing. In our institution, anything you say, ask my students and former students, they keep on saying, someone say, hey, Prof, when we talk, we don't know how to respond. I say, why? They say, when we say something and you say, why? And then they continue to say, I say, how do you know? Even in our research assistants in the office, when we ask, and I continually ask questions, I don't want them to say something without having knowledge of it. They should be so confident and say, I am saying this and I know because of that and this and this. Then we can now take that epistemology and put it in court and start to interrogate them. Who are they? Because they are your informants. So we would actually start there by critically appraising at that level. So it's not about so-and-so wrote and said that, but who was? Hey, let me tell you about my epistemology. I told you that my perspective as well, it is based in the Bible. And there is this guy who was trying to plagiarize someone else and healing people. And then the demons came and confronted him. They said, Paul and Silas, we know, but who are you? So everybody informs you of something. We need to know who they are, lest we come and make decisions in our organization based on epistemologies that are actually not holding water. So very, very, very critical. So the issue of knowledge is important. And knowledge has got 4 levels on its own. There must be facts. You must have factual knowledge. That is why I'm so convinced today. And that's why throughout this conference, don't be bored. I'll be wearing different clothes. So don't be surprised. I'll still be having this. Because I'm convinced on my epistemology of the South. And I don't say all of you were that. But for me, I am trying to remind myself of my roots as an African, proudly so, and say I can be a scientist and a scholar with an African perspective. So please don't go all and buy this thing. I'm not promoting someone. But I am reminding myself that I need to know who I am. Because if I don't know who I am, I might not be able to answer your questions. I must start at who I am. That's why there was an advert of someone who says when you talk to them, they say, do you know who I am? And then the attendant or the receptionist calls on the loudspeaker. Ladies and gentlemen, help me. There's someone who's here and they don't know who they are. So knowledge is important with facts. Secondly, knowledge is important with concepts. And the Costa model, you need to understand the concepts. I had a big problem within our scholar community when we started, or when COVID-19 started. Oh my goodness. A full scientist, Dr. Tanya, they would put in something they think they don't know. That's why they had misinformation, and scholars even divided misinformation and what again? Disinformation. Yes, because everybody was just saying things and things and things without facts. So factual knowledge is important, but concepts, how this relates to that. I am someone who is fully persuaded in herbs and the healing properties, because I was raised in a house that worked and healed a lot of people and us with herbs. I taught the Kozana principle. I'm fully persuaded. As a matter of fact, every day I take immune boosters, and you read those immune boosters, they're made of herbs, aloe and all that. So I'm fully persuaded about that. I even understand facts. I understand the concepts. Let's take it further. So having understand concepts and facts, let's understand procedures, procedural knowledge. It means how this is going to, so with systematic reviews and qualitative research, it's more about procedures and protocols. If you don't understand procedures and protocols, even in your organization, things will not work. It's very important to have what we call quality management systems so that you can have policies and procedures and how that is done. That's what we use in systematic reviews. It's not necessarily an easy thing, but it needs people to understand it. Then you'll enjoy it as I enjoy it. You can see how happy I am as I talk about it. Any questions so far? Right. Now, the fourth knowledge is metacognitive knowledge. This one says, and it helped me, that is it. It helped me because it says, how do, not how do I, it says, thinking about thinking. I think about how I think. We reflect on how we think. And we evaluate how we think. And it helped me to understand the concept of in other words. Because if you don't understand in other words, somebody talks to you and you start saying, oh, in other words, this is what they think. And you're actually confessing it's other words. It's not the words they said. It's not the words you read, but it's interpretation. So it's very important. So that's meta, and that's just knowledge. Once we understand knowledge, we can take it higher. Wow. Thank you so much, guys. Those are our research assistants. Welcome. They've been busy doing other things. Thank you so much for coming in. So the higher level after your knowledge is the aspect of comprehension. And qualitative research is about understanding. Verstaan. I read that, Dr. Tanya, in the book. I was looking at the works of Max Weber, who challenged me because I said to colleagues, I believe qualitative research did not come from the works of the sociologist Max Weber, who was German. And he said that the need is to, so it reads like verstem. So I don't know whether that's verstaan. Yes, but it reads like that. So it's understanding. But I said, no ways. Qualitative is universal. And I started to promote what is called qualitative universalism. Because when you go to my village, I realize they've been practicing qualitative research aspects all the time. Even the ethics component. You don't go to my village, collect data without having gone to the king or the chief and seek permission and have them listening to you, giving you a focus group in a crawl and authorizing you. So I saw those to work, but understanding is important. This you need to understand. And we put so much value in making sure that students and researchers understand. When you've understood, then you can apply. So application is something. So that's why we use tools such as what Dr. Nandi was saying here. Because to start to apply is so much difficult. You need to have reminders. Hence, if I had tools for application, I would have passed my law degree. Actually, I'm going to go back. Yes, sir. Yeah. Dr. Nandi, help
have
me.
other-
Time.
I know that we still have other sessions that will answer this, but I just want to make a humble request perhaps to integrate this into the thinking
Yes.
of providing solutions practically. This is a conference taking place in South Africa. It's a global conference.
Yes.
What I think always works better in life is having an idea that can serve as a pilot that would reflect the impact of the outcome related to an event like this. So one wishes to throw back in a form of a question, but also a humble request that, is it not possible to look at an empirical way of marrying the theory and evidence of what can be impacted based on a review that can be done on a 30-year democratic order in South Africa, and really plug into an assessment of the gap analysis that can just give an idea of what could then come as part of a reviewed report of what I can call diagnosis.
Yes.
Of what could have been the challenge that we may have had over the 30-year period, that you have had an infantile slanted growth, if I may put it that way.
Yes.
That is supposed to have been driven to propel society forward. Because I mean, I've drilled deep into about 5 Asian tigers models, success stories. And what they did in a 30-year period is something that can actually be what in a slow pace in Africa we do in 300 years. So if we do a review and an interaction of scholars like this, maybe through you and Sci-Bono, that takes as a pilot the South African story, and it will be the most beautiful story, because it's one country that got independent.
I am inviting you to the evening, the gala dinner. You'll hear, we'll talk about that.
So part of that review and assessment that effect, can just unleash something that gives us a theoretic understanding of what could have been the challenges, which is really, again, between theory and practice, because from the period of a 30-year
Get it, yeah?
Yes, from a 30-year period, you may anticipate a child that has grown to be a 30-year-old. Of course, a child that grows on memory of many centuries of systematic growth that happened, even if it may not necessarily have been democratic, but there's a lot that propels South Africa to, your international sophistication, infrastructure services. But what we've seen is a regression in many aspects. And I just want to throw it as an idea. Is it possible to probably, and I wish to be part of it, to do a 30-year review that can drill deep into making that assessment? And I think a very important outcome of that is a review report of a 30-year period that can then, identify and flag all of those things that may not necessarily have gone through the methodological and systematic thought construct process that have a tried and tested tool.
Sure.
I'm not sure if I'm making sense.
You're making sense, and policy researchers are in here. So there's a challenge, a review-based study. There's a hand there, and then after that hand, I will run and try and conclude. There's a hand right at the back. Can that hand be up again? Thank you.
I just want to, to respond to my colleague there. I see he's really worried about the disconnect between people who are leading and those who have got ideas. But he thinks the best way to solve it will be to try to train those that are leading to have ideas. But I think the simple way will be to have those that have got ideas to lead. That will be the simplest way to do, because it will be very difficult to go and teach them ideas that they have to apply. But it's very easy for those that have got ideas to just organize themselves, contest elections, and take over. So look at
Okay, all right. Let me tell you what, the 52 weeks of research dialogue. So let's have this going on. All right, let me get my slide back and continue. So the next levels of this thinking would have been now synthesis, sorry, critical analysis, at least the ability to understand and break down the concepts to make sense. When you are looking at a phenomena, to be able to break it down and make sense. And then the following one would be obviously to now put it together in your own way and evaluate later. So the three ones, critical analysis and synthesis and evaluation would be higher order. But these ones that I talk about are the basic. Now, the question that you should ask yourself when you do that evaluation is to look, where are we even with regards to obtaining factual knowledge, which is the first. But let me continue. So, and I'm going to be going to yours, Ndate Malele, because this is part what we are seeing of AI. And you can see how useful AI is. But there are challenges if people are not trained to use it. Because again, these are computers. They can do what they want to do, what you want them to, not what you want them to do. However, some of these softwares, including this one, this one and ChatGPT, I wish Prof. Nsobi was here, but he's coming because he also raised ChatGPT as well. There is a level of credibility. For instance, you can't ask ChatGPT to write any article for you. It can't even give you sources, literature. As a matter of fact, if you give it a hard, these things are like another AI. If you've got GPS talks to you, takes you wherever you want, but you've seen it getting lost somewhere. Maybe it hasn't taken maps so much, but these ones, they will end up giving and throwing you any literature. And then now it's your role to go and look for those sources. And you see most of the time, they are not anywhere. They are fictitious. So there's a risk of writing something fictitious. So people need to be trained how to use these. So, but AI makes research so much easier. And I see it as well in qualitative data analysis, and I'll get that quickly. But there ought to be training on that. And remember, research is based on ethical approaches. So if someone understands the ethics around it, they are able to actually follow that. Dr. Tanya, can somebody give a mic? Because I know she's going to add on ChatGPT. So help us there.
Thanks, Prof. So first of all, thank you for not a master class, but a PhD plus class today in this. Yeah, it's fascinating. I just realized how much I don't know. So, yeah, and I also need to declare that I know very little about ChatGPT as well. I'm trying to negotiate the waters, you know, as a supervisor for postgrad students and undergrad students. But what's interesting now, just to bring it to contemporary context, is that 4 days ago, there was a Japanese writer, Ri Kudan, who won a prestigious award for fiction, a book that she wrote, and as a promising writer. And then after getting the prize, she, during an interview, said that she used about approximately 5% of her book was based on AI, on ChatGPT, and not generatively. So that's the big argument. So we don't actually, and that's where concepts are so important, isn't it? Because is this generative or is this reflexive? So, and that's indeed how she used AI or ChatGPT, is that she, so while it's a fiction, I mean, fiction is also incredibly enriching, isn't it? Because it's about the, you know, everyday problems. So she, what she did is when she had a personal existential question situated in this narrative, she asked ChatGPT, what is the solution to this? And very often it wasn't something that she expected or, it didn't resonate with her. And then she used that to reflect on how is that different or the same for her. And that is the 5% that she incorporated into her book. And the writers and the judges defended the prize on X, saying that it's not generative. So ChatGPT didn't create the paragraphs for her. That she used it as a reflexive tool. And I think this is a little bit where we are trying to navigate the waters at universities as well, is to actually use it as it's an incredibly meta-reflexive tool. In other words, you ask your students to do something, what is their opinion, and then you ask ask ChatGPT what's their opinion, and then compare, and then do a meta-reflection. So that type of thing is the ultimate look. I mean, it's not going to go away, so we really need to. The problem is that it came a little bit before we actually have ethical framework, a framework of ethics for it. So that's a little bit of a problem, and also the rigor in checking to which extent a person is using ChatGPT comes and goes, so because it's self-teaching. One can actually, I mean, what I can, and this is now very rudimentary, when I ask the first years to write a reflexive essay, just to help them, build an argument and use literature and then reflect on an issue in their own life. And funnily, when I read those essays, you can see if they used ChatGPT, you can see the circular reasoning. First of all, you can see the very conflated words, and then you can see the reasoning feeds into itself. So there's not a well-developed argument. And then the other thing is that ChatGPT will never lie to you. So it will, deliberately, it won't tell you, okay, I'm not, no, I don't know. So, and that is why when you ask it for references, it will conjure it, and they're not accurate. In my experience, because I've asked it for quite a few references in preparing for work and just wanted to play around, and I'd say about 30 to 35% of the time, those references are they're constructed or inaccurate. And of course, when you ask the question again, then it profusely apologizes, with confidence during the whole of the process. So that's my penny in the ocean.
Thank you so much. Give a round of applause to Dr. Tanya. So she's from Wits University, and she's in the Department of Psychology, right? Occupational therapy. Thank you so much. So the thing is, that is that there is no way we can run away from an era. So one of the things is that most with universities, and I would like to get Professor Singh's comment there as well, just briefly. One of the issue with universities is that we were taken aback. That we are always behind, because many universities now, I say, they are coming up with policy and see, but even turn it in on its own. It's actually part of artificial intelligence. So we need to be training faculties and have modules, not just one module on these, so that we are ahead, because we are leading with teaching, and make sure that students can finish their studies on time, or do focus on research itself and use these tools to analyze. But yes, there's a lot that can be said. Prof. Singh, I just your view on ChatGPT or AI in scholarship, very, very briefly.
Thank you very much. I think while we are debating and arguing and researching, we must always bear in mind that there are people out doing business. They're making money. So we will never catch up, and we will not be ahead of them. So what is important is then that we've got to embrace modern technology.
Thank you.
And in saying this, we can't begin to implement our own loose ideas about whether it's good or not until we fully comprehend the impact this is going to have, because there's no point in us doing a policy today, because every hour this modern technology is changing.
It's changing.
Yes, it's evolving very fast. But I think largely the issue is most higher education institutions they should have some policy relating to things like, you know, just copying and pasting and all of plagiarism, et cetera, et cetera. So this can fall in there, but to have a separate policy on AI is very difficult because it's not only about research. Administration is using AI. Okay?
Exactly.
When they do, you know, results and things online, et cetera, in many cases, in huge institutions, even what traditionally was done by HR and HR personnel is being done by AI. So I think as qualitative researchers, all I can say is let's embrace the technology. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. If the conference had time and we planned, we didn't put that, I would have invited our colleagues. We got a big institution, the second largest institution in SADC, Sci-Bono. That's our capacitation partner. So they are fully, equipped and deal with these issues of AI. That's why he's interested, because they're board member of that institution as well. And they take 4IR right to the fore, and they're continually busy looking at technology. So please visit their website and see what they do. And yes, our website, because I also had research there. I forgot. Yes, sorry. And herself too, because she's a board member there. But indeed, technology is here. Just briefly, we've seen it as well in medicine. As you see me walking the way I was just diagnosed recently. And it was easy. And when I was diagnosed, I was surprised to see that, because I was scared of injections. And I was surprised to see that when they put drip, they can actually they've got equipment now. They actually tell you this injection will cause pain. I'm waiting for the nurse, Dr. Kylie, to come with a long needle, which I already warned them that I'm scared of needles. I'm not seeing a needle. She just said, she said, I've done the injection. That's how advanced technology is. So if it is in healthcare, we need in all other areas to be doing it. And in research, particularly in QES, we are using it a lot. So we would need to get people to be trained on how to use it. Let's get next slide. She's here already. She wants to chase me away. The next slide, quickly. She wants to chase me with a question. She can't just chase me and not benefit. So you'll see that's AI. So if you put in, I'll make an example. Here, I had a search term that says qualitative evidence synthesis protocols, which is something similar to your proposal, but it's required to write a protocol when you do a QES. So, but I wanted to get metrics data, so that when you write your report, your literature, you could actually look at that. Okay, you might not see. Let me do this. That red area, it's where your metrics are. So you can see here, I had papers, 110 papers, but also their citation impact, because papers is not enough that I read a paper. What impact is that paper doing out there? So you can see citation impact. You can see a whole lot of issues. That's important when you talk about and appraise a literature. So we can start to appraise it using Hazings, publish or perish. And this is where you see the results. Can you see that? Here, this other one, it also tells you that these are papers from 1973 to 2021. I just amplified that in the rate. So this is how also AI can help you. I don't think I would enjoy qualitative evidence synthesis or systematic reviews without using this. I've got a few minutes. So this is one of the protocols that you would actually have to use. So having collected data, and you would see now that you are able to report. That's called PRISMA, which stands for Preferred Reporting Items in Systematic Reviews. You are justifying how you selected these papers and how did you actually collect them? Where did you collect them? How did you actually appraise them? And you can see at the bottom there, can you see 6 studies included? Do you see that? But look at the number of studies that I got. There you can see 6 from another database, 56 from another database, 1,017 from another database, 1,533. You can see how many articles were there. But after critical appraisal, after taking these articles through a particular protocol method, of that population, I only could get these 6 ones that could actually inform at the end of the day literature. And the study, that was enough, because it shows within whatever has been published in this particular time, only 6 met the criteria. Prof, I'm just running to that criteria. I'm just passing everything. I'm running to that criteria. So there are many tools that are used. And as we give you the link, as I'm promising the link, so you'll see these tools. But CASP is on top, is the one that is recommended to appraise qualitative studies. So it is easy. It's got 10 questions that check. But COREC has got 32 questions. So it's for those that are in practice, and particularly in healthcare. And it's actually from Australia. But and by the yeah, that is Australia. Then you've got these others. But as a postgraduate practitioner, I always drive students to CASP, because CASP, you can appraise qualitative studies. You can also appraise quantitative studies. But remember, here today, my demo is on qualitative evidence synthesis. In other words, looking for evidence through human experiences that are drawn from different studies within qualitative research and different research designs, which would be a case study or phenomenology or ethnography or narrative inquiry or appreciative inquiry or participative action research or content analysis, or, there are many, 14 as well. There's many of those. So you could actually analyze those. And here is the appraisal so that I go out. I'm going to appraisal. Oh, you train? I trained and I qualified to actually do this appraisal. So in our institutions as well, we will encourage, we'll teach you and then give you this. It's not from us, but you must be actually certified. Then we know that you understand how to use protocols. Okay, then there are 10 key questions, and I'm gonna go out of this. In our software, we've created I believe that's one of the first softwares that we've created to analyze qualitative data. It's called it's called Costa QDA. So it analyzes qualitative data, and it helps you and gives reports, same as you would have with other softwares, your NVivos and all that. But after getting data since 2020 and students showing how they're struggling with other tools, so we develop a software that analyzes qualitative data. It helps you to appraise literature as well by going through these questions. Was there a clear statement of the aims of the research? So you need to read and say it was there. And you need to tell, if you give it 0.2, it means it was a yes. If you give it 0.1, it means you can't tell, you are not seeing, it's vague, you can't see that, or it was not there. So you appraise that and go through. But I like the question number 9, no, not number 9, I like question number 8. Was the data analysis sufficiently rigorous? That's a topic for another day. And I think I'm almost finished my time. You can see and you are wondering what's behind this demo. So that's a workshop. We try to give these workshops 1.5 hours, but they are long. So if you are interested as well, visit our website, and then you see, or you go straight to, if you go vleresearch.net. So you'll see all our partners, including Sci-Bono, including the World Conference, but you will be able to get into the course that we are giving free so that you can do it online and test yourself and see if you are able to and competent to review literature with this method and with this science. I'm not able to continue further, so I might as well say, thank you for being a good audience. She's asking because she wants to benefit. So the previous screen, can you get it up before I go? Yes, you can ask a question. Yes, you can ask a question.
Actually, it's not to benefit, it's to push him further to share with us what he would say he sees as a point of convergence, especially having referred to that point number 8 there, because my earlier follow-up was initially phrased to say, what would you consider as a point of convergence if we look at Atmos SR and specifically take the ethical part and the objective part? when we go to literature review and we deal with the purposeful literature review, because when we are eliminating articles, we need to be ensuring rigor by not being biased. But now, how do you get that point of convergence between that purposeful literature review and taking into account that from the point of view of rigor, this is still ethical and objective?
Very, very, very interesting, Dr. Nandi. As a matter of fact, if you look at methods of rigor in qualitative research, there are 4 dimensions. The first dimension is credibility. Most students, Prof. Singh, you'll see they'll say, I applied credibility, dependability is the second one, transferability and conformability. But they are not showing how they did that. So they know it's there, but they can't demonstrate. Because we need to know, how did you do it? You say you did it, where in your study? And how did you apply it? Because if you say just credibility alone, there are about 6 strategies such as triangulation, peer debriefing, negative case analysis that Prof talked about. There's a number of these. So the question that we ask is how? How did you ensure credibility? And then if you said you did transferability, how did you ensure that? It's not enough to know them. It's enough to demonstrate how you applied them. But again, colleagues, if you remember the prisma I've showed the previous slide, that shows so many articles that were there, yet we come up with 6 articles. Ask yourself questions. Why? I'll submit to you, esteemed scholars, that most papers don't go to that extent. Yet papers are critical to inform policy, to inform metadata that you apply in your companies. But you'll not see how they did rigor. But we must still use that evidence. We tell our students, go dig. We tell them, go dig. But Prof, I've done this, I've used housing, I've used this. I say, I can't help it if you've got a paper that doesn't demonstrate how credibility was applied. Because it's important for scholars to demonstrate everything that they've done. We even ask the question, if you used 2, why didn't you use others? We don't say use others. A scholar, because you are informing us so that we're going to implement in our businesses. We need to trust what you are saying. So many, and I talked about the knowledge economy. Publishing is a knowledge economy. So many would be actually just looking for publishing. Hence, we said, look at papers that are submitted through this. But still, even those, for you to look at a high quality paper, is a paper. Remember, papers are about 4,600 at the most, 6,000 words or somewhere there. So a writer needs to be able to still demonstrate that without going beyond the required number of paper that words that you are writing. She said, in Xhosa, one of the languages, the language that I'm dressed for, it says Siyavala ke ngoku. We are closing now. I lead the stage. Can you come help me?
Using the words of Dr. Tanya van der Merwe, I wish to get a comment from one of the participants here, anyone, to indicate if this was a lecture or it was just sharing ideas. What did you get from this? A mouthful. It's a masterclass. Thank you so much, Prof. Another round of applause. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We have overstayed by 5 minutes, but I'm sure it was for a good purpose. But I can assure you, tomorrow we're gonna pay back this 5 minutes by ensuring that we finish a little early. And I am certain that all what we've learned here today, we will apply for the benefit of our country and continent. Let's make research fashionable to ensure that we can all be creators of knowledge. Thank you so much. This is now taking us to the end, where we will then go and prepare to go for the gala dinner at a venue called Serengeti. If you can be there at 6 for the gala dinner to start sharp at 18:30. You were such a good audience to give us all the attention and the inputs. Please do enjoy the evening. Don't forget there's some form of competition. We're going to perform there. Come prepared. There will be some awards. Thank you so much.